Miss Jody Jester is the executive director of Bridge of Life. And I know Scott Farrington originally had mentioned Jody to John and myself. And Jody's joined the organization in 2014 as the first staff member and was promoted to executive director in 2024. Jody's been instrumental in growing the Bridge of Life's programs and partnerships to better serve families that are impacted by foster care and adoption. Before joining Bridge of Life, Jody co-founded and directed an early childhood center and served as director of children's ministry. She holds a degree in youth and family ministry from Kentucky Christian University, where she was recognized for excellence in her field and was part of 2 NCAA women's basketball national championship teams. And she's still playing today. Jody and her husband are adoptive parents and also have served as foster parents. And Jody, if you take the stage, we want to hear all about Bridge of Life. I know it's embarrassing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, the basketball thing is so goofy, but it's a lot easier to talk to people about that sometimes than like, hey, do you want to be a foster parent, right? It's a really good icebreaker. So I'm super happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Great to see some familiar faces today as well. And I want to start out just by saying thank you for your support. Whether or not you know a lot about Bridge of Life, and at the end of the day, that'll be different, but you've already been instrumental in helping our families. The Family Festival coming up, we're really excited about that. We were one of the agencies that we've been able to promote that event and get some families signed up, and they're looking forward to it. And as someone who has fostered and is now an adoptive mom of a gaggle of children, and that is often the case, right? Like it doesn't seem like it happens too often that a foster family just has like a child. It seems like a lot of times there's a sibling group or several children who are in the home because of capacity issues. And so just being able to like go to Chick-fil-A, right, can be cost prohibitive for some families. And so to be able to offer them a baseball experience where food is included and all of the things, that's a huge gift to our families. And so we've really just delighted in seeing many of them sign up. And as I mentioned, many of them with lots and lots and lots of kids. And so that's a treat for them and not something that they take for granted. So thanks for your efforts to do that in the community. We also were the recipients this last hurricane season of of a grant to help with hurricane recovery. And so we've been able to walk alongside families. FEMA and all of the government entities and organizations, I mean, they do an incredible job, and it seems like there's always those families that kind of slip through the cracks, right? And for whatever reason, insurance was a hassle, or FEMA says that wasn't a result of the hurricane, and so you've got these families who are really struggling, and they feel like they've done all the things that they needed to do, and yet they still have some needs. And so when we are able to turn and say, hey, we're here and we can support you in that, that's a great blessing to them as well. So we are caring for children from hard places, and I'm Jody. I work with Bridge of Life. I've been part of the organization for over 10 years now. I mentioned that my husband and I fostered for a period of time, and then we became adoptive parents, and so I'm happy to be able to bring that lived experience into the space. Professionally, one of the things that we do as well is to lead trauma-informed training, primarily for caregivers. We've done that for a lot of years, and in the last couple of years, we've been able to offer that to organizations, nonprofit organizations, and businesses as well, because we really believe that kids who have a hard start in life, it's not prescriptive, but it's descriptive, that they can continue to have challenges later on. And so if you're working with an adult population and that's a person who maybe hasn't had some intentional healing and work done in their lives, we can continue to see some of those same struggles and behaviors that happen well into the adult years. And so I actually had the privilege to train a group of 20 or so professionals this morning and then hop right over here. And so part of my qualifications to be able to do that, I'm a TBRI practitioner, and so what that stands for is trust-based relational intervention. And what that means is kids who come from hard places don't necessarily have that foundation of trust. If you think about a caregiver, a great attachment that happens between a mom and a child, right? What happens when a baby cries? And this is audience participation. If you had a baby and they were crying, what would you do? Pick them up, right? What else would we do? Rock them, right? Meet their needs, feed them, right? What if the baby is still crying and you've done all of those things? Right, we're gonna burp them, right? We're gonna swoosh them, we're gonna rock, we're gonna bounce, we're gonna sway. Somebody this morning said, take them outside. It's like magic for babies, right? It's like change the environment. And so what babies learn when they get that really healthy start in life is my voice matters, right? When I cry, someone will hear me and respond to that need. That I don't have to face this world alone. There's someone who's going to come alongside me. They're going to help me. They're going to help me co-regulate because I can't meet my needs on my own. And that I can trust, right? Trust is the lesson of the first year of life. And so when we lead with a trust-based approach, and that's what that TBRI starts with, then we just build healthier communities and stronger families. And so we're working with kids who didn't get that foundation of trust, right? They cried, and maybe mama didn't come or didn't come consistently. And maybe those needs weren't met or weren't met in a way that that child needed. And so that foundation of trust is eroded. So I get the opportunity to share with groups like this, and particularly our caregivers, about the importance of building in a trust-filled foundation so that people can move on and lead healthy and productive and thriving lifestyles. I also have the opportunity to teach what's called nonviolent crisis intervention. And if you're at all familiar with the foster care world or child welfare, what's happening right now, there's an escalation in behaviors, right? You turn on the news, you can see that as well. And so we want to be able to train our caregivers, our staff, our volunteers with all the tools that they need to be able to verbally de-escalate. But there are times when you might have to learn how to safely restrain and do that in a way that offers a lot of dignity to the person who's having a hard time. So those are some of the things that I get to do within the organization and consider it a joy to be able to do those. As far as Bridge Life, our mission and vision is on the screen. And I always like to clarify a couple of things regarding our mission because people either wonder and ask or they wonder and they walk away without the answer. So we're a faith-based organization and a Christ-based organization. And I heard somebody say it about us earlier in the week. They said so Bridge of Life is by Christians, but not just for Christians. And I think that's a really good descriptor because sometimes people think, do I have to be part of a church in order to engage in Bridge of Life programs? Absolutely not. So it speaks more to our motivation, but we're serving all families in Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto counties. And then the relational trauma piece can hang people up a little bit too. We used to say foster and adoptive families is who we serve. And then we started saying foster, adoptive, relative caregivers, and non-relative caregivers, and that can become a mouthful, right? And then we also got into the prevention space, which you'll learn a little bit more about later. And so we didn't coin the term, but we started using the term relational trauma. So anyone who's caring for a kiddo whose needs were not met in that consistent and healthy way, and they're now in the home of somebody else who's providing that care, whether it's grandma, next door neighbor, a teacher, or licensed foster parent, or a child who's been adopted. So that's a little bit about us and what we do, and you'll hear us often say what we're doing is we're providing kind of wraparound care. So Bridge of Life started in the home of our founders, Danny and Anne Marie Jones. Around 15 years ago, they were kind of walking their own foster care journey, and they would show up at church on a Sunday morning, and people had a lot of questions for them. Who are those kids with you this Sunday? Are those the same kids that were with you last Sunday? They look different. Wait, there's foster care in our area? There are kids who don't have safe places. And so they were really positioned in a unique way to be able to answer those questions for people. And so they went to their church and they said, hey, people are asking us a lot of questions. What can we do to kind of raise awareness of foster care in our church community? And the church said, we do that through small groups. So if you want to open up your home and host a small group and talk about vulnerable children, you're welcome to do that. So Danny and Anne-Marie did just that. They started having living room sessions where they would talk about what God's heart is towards vulnerable people, children specifically. And they would invite case managers, guardian ad litem, mental health care providers, other people who were in the child welfare space to come into their home and share about the local need. So people started responding. Those people started fostering. They became adoptive families. And if you've ever been part of a small group like that, you get pretty close. And all of a sudden, so-and-so's bringing a new baby home. And can we take them a meal? Or do their other kids need childcare? Do they need help putting the crib together? Those kinds of things. And so you'll see as I kind of work through what it is that Bridge Life does, that those early programs and that responsiveness of that small group is what kind of birthed the idea of Bridge Life. And that whether or not you're part of a caring church community, if you raise your hand to say this really hard yes, foster care or adoption, we're going to do our best to wrap around you in ways that are meaningful and impactful, and in ways that child welfare isn't positioned to be able to do that. So some ways that we do that. Stew Crew. We have people who get together who make freezer meals, and then those are delivered in times of need. Let's say a family gets a new placement, they have sick kiddos, those kinds of things. So that's actually what we used the funding for that came from Kiwanis, is when the hurricane hit, we have deep freezers that are strategically positioned throughout the Tri-County area. And unfortunately, every single one of them lost power for longer than you want a deep freezer lose power. And so we lost our meals. And so that money coming in so quickly after that allowed us to restock those freezers and make sure that families were still getting fed. And you can imagine how important that was right after the hurricane, when we had a lot of families who were dealing with their own freezer loss and lack of power and those kinds of things. Hammer Time is home improvement projects, and those can be anything from small handyman tasks to, if you're a grandma caring for, 6 kids on your own and you just need help replacing light bulbs. Like, it doesn't necessarily even need to be skilled. It's just stuff that needs to happen around the house. And maybe the caregivers are even skilled and have the funding to do it, but they don't have the time. As much as we can come in and give families the gift of time, because if we're helping with some home things and they can turn that time into connecting with kids who have had a difficult experience, that's just going to strengthen those relationships. So one of the stories I love the most that's come from Hammer Time, even though I just said a lot of them are small, some of them are big and they're pretty significant. We had a contractor in our community who volunteers his time with us pretty regularly, and a bunch of people who can paint a room or install a floor, do those kinds of things. And so we had a family that came to us. They're a licensed foster family, and they had said yes to 2 young kids, both infants. It was really just supposed to be a weekend. There's something in foster care called respite, and so sometimes a placement has been identified, but the kids can't go there yet. And so they look for a family who can take them for a weekend or a week or something like that, and then they're supposed to transition to whatever their permanent placement is going to be. So this family had done just that. The foster care licensing rules are different with babies. They can be in a crib in the master bedroom. But once a baby gets over the age of 1, then the licensing standard changes and they have to have a room of their own or share it with other children of the same gender. So this family had said yes to these 2 little ones. And the 2 little ones ended up being there a lot longer than expected. And actually, termination of parental rights happened, and now this family has been parenting these 2 little ones for quite a while, and they're attached and they're bonded, and they desperately want to adopt these kids because that became an option. But their house was full, and we always say their hearts were bigger than their home. And you can imagine a family can't just say, well, we'll just move into a bigger house. Like, if they're not financially set up for that, or that wasn't in their plans, or they're in the districted school zone, that they like 1,000,001 factors. So they submitted a Hammer Time request to us and said, can you have somebody come out and just help us brainstorm? Like, is there a way that we can say yes to these now toddlers, right, permanently to be a part of our family? And so we went out with this contractor who donates his time, and he identified a solution that would allow them to transform their garage into a bedroom. And so this family got to adopt these 2 kiddos. So there's things like that. That's life-changing, right? That's life-changing for that family, but also for their kids. So that would be an example of like a really big project. But again, sometimes it's just, hey, the office is now going to be a bunk bed room for kiddos, and we need help painting it and that kind of thing. So the trauma-informed training I mentioned, we host a program called The Gathering twice a month. We host one in Venice and then one in the Lakewood Ranch area now. And this is for caregivers. So licensed foster parents, they're required to have so many hours of in-person education each year in order to maintain their license. So we partner with all of our local licensing agencies. If a family comes to us for training, that counts towards their recertification. But we do get grandparents who are raising grandkids who come to that, adoptive parents as well. And I would say a lot of what we offer, to bring someone a meal is a blessing, right? If you got a baby at 3 a.m. and they came with the diaper on their body and that was it, and someone said, "Can I bring you dinner?" you would say yes, right? And so we don't want to minimize that. It's such a huge support. But as far as moving the needle significantly on what needs to happen in the life of that child and that family, we know that a casserole is only going to do so much. This is where we would say we're making the biggest difference. We're moving the needle the most, because when we start to understand what some of these kids are up against and we can change our compassion a little bit and our responsiveness to them, it's going to lead to much better outcomes. So we're happy to be able to provide training for caregivers, but also, as I mentioned, nonprofit partners and businesses. And then we're just offering community building events as well. Monthly, we have Ladies Night Out, which is just a chance for mamas to get together. We say parenting is hard. Parenting kids with trauma background, you need different tools in your toolbox. And so to be able to show up on a Friday night at a restaurant and sit around a table with other moms who just get it, and you don't have to explain and defend and do this long thing. It's just like we're all kind of in the same parenting journey together. That's really significant for them. And then Parents Night Out is an opportunity for us to, again, we're going to engage volunteers. We're going to do background screens. We're going to do some trauma training for our volunteers as well. But if you've hired a babysitter lately, you know that can be really expensive. What we love about Parents Night Out as well is when kids come into care, they're not always guaranteed. Actually, they're rarely guaranteed to be with a sibling. That's the goal. So if you have a sibling group of 5, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could all be placed with the same foster family? That's a big ask. And so a lot of times they do get separated. But parents know if everybody signs up for Parents Night Out, let's say those 5 kiddos went to 3 different homes, but all 3 families register for one of our events, those kids are going to get to see each other. And so that acts as kind of a little bit of normalcy for them to be in an event together with their brothers and sisters. And everything that I'm talking about, these are free to caregivers. So none of our programs cost anything. We're really fortunate to have funding from individual donors and churches, and we do our fair share of writing grant requests and that kind of thing. And so we're able to just offer this. Cost is never a barrier for families. But Parents Night Out, we partner with churches, so they open up their doors to us and allow us to host these events for free for the community. And then financial assistance is one time up to $1,000, and we try really hard to vet requests to see if there's a sustainability issue. So if someone has already used Season of Sharing and they're saying X, Y, and Z agency can't help us and some of those kinds of things, it lets us know, okay, we might have an ongoing issue, and so if that's the case, we're going to lean into some of our community partners. But sometimes it's just like, hey, the AC went out and we live in Florida and we didn't save for that. And, we're up on our bills and everything is fine. Also, what happens is sometimes kids come into care and it can take the system a little while to figure out the subsidy and for those checks to be coming in. So we've had a family one time, they took in a sibling group of 3, but it was like Tuesday night and they both had to go to work the next day. And that meant that those kids who came into care needed to go to preschool the next day. Well, they were really connected to their community, and they had a preschool that was able to take those kids on that short of notice, but it was private pay. It wasn't one that was funded by ELC or any of those. And so, while they worked on the paperwork and worked on the sustainability piece, we were able to say, hey, for the next few days until you guys get this figured out, we know you have to go to work. If you have to stay home from work, that's going to set you back even further financially. And so to be able to step into some of those gaps where subsidies haven't quite caught up yet, and be able to help families, we love to be able to do that. And then I mentioned just hurricane assistance. We've been really fortunate to help a lot of families, thanks to you and others who just again, like there was a foster care campus. They had to mandatorily. Is that, just go with it, it's fine. They had to evacuate, but there wasn't funding to necessarily assist them with the evacuation. And so you just think about the complexity. Like, it's hard enough for us as just a family of 4 or whatever your situation is, but then when you've got these extra kiddos who are in your care, it just introduces some twists and turns that other people who aren't fostering may not have to deal with. So the Superhero 5K is an example of an awareness event. We would love to see as many of you at that in February as possible. It's really just to raise awareness of the need for more foster and adoptive families. And one of the ways that we do that is to host a lot of our community nonprofits, especially if they're in the child welfare space, to come and set up a tent. It's kind of a one-stop shop. If you ever thought, I want to know something about foster care, all of the main agencies are really there. We try to do a really good job of saying, hey, not everybody's called to foster care or adoption, but everybody can do something. And so, for example, like one of our partners, the Twig, would be there. Well, the Twig, all they are is an upscale boutique, not all, as in that's diminishing, but they provide this boutique shopping experience for kids in foster care free of charge. And so maybe your something is to just know about the Twig so that you can start donating clothes for children to the Twig so that those kids have this shopping experience that gives them a lot of dignity, and it's not just somebody else's leftovers or hand-me-downs. So we try to say, hey, there's a lot of different ways other than opening up your home, whether you have a bag of clothes that are in good condition or 2 hours on a Saturday night to provide childcare, or you're handy. There are so many different ways to get involved in this space. So at the Superhero 5K, we have volunteers who show up. Super cool, actually, because the volunteers who have started doing this the day before the race actually work for the Safe Children Coalition. So we're partnered so well with child welfare that they say, hey, we're going to make this kind of a team building, our own volunteer thing. We're going to come out to your race. And so they hand chalk the first name of every child in foster care in the Tri-County area at the start-finish line. So it's this beautiful, colorful display. And we pull the list of names like 3 days before. So we try to get it as current as we possibly can. And so just for runners to stand at the start-finish line and look out at this sea of names, it's been anywhere from 700 to 1,500 kids. All their first names are there. And just as a reminder, like, hey, we see you, we're here for you, this is your community showing up for you. The runner bibs also have a, like, I am running for, and then it's the first name and the age of a child who's in foster care. And so it's just a great visual reminder and a chance for our community to come together on a cause that's really difficult, but also to kind of celebrate that these kids and people who advocate for them and work with them are our community's heroes, we think. And we would count you among that group of people who really just say, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of my time and invest a lot of my volunteer in making sure that kids have a safe place. 2 stories that we love from this past year. So at the very end of the race, this year, a teenage girl walked up to one of our staff members and said, do you have any extra chalk lying around? And we did, and so she gave it to her. And the girl said, she said, I'm in foster care right now with my sister, but we've been with our foster parent for a while, and next week is our adoption day. She said, I see my name on the track, but I'm gonna go exit out. And so just like a kind of a wow sort of a moment, right? That she was proud that her forever family took her to that event, and that she wanted everybody to know, hey, I'm not gonna be defined by this foster care situation. Another woman came up to one of our board members and was just kind of thanking him for the day, and it was a great event, I was happy to be here. And she was getting ready to walk away, and then she turned back and she said, my kids' names were on that path last year. And she goes, I've worked really hard to get them back, and now their names are not on that path anymore, and I brought them back to run your race. And I just thought, goodness, like, we don't always get to see what God is doing with our efforts. And in one event, for us to see a successful adoption and a successful reunification, like, what a huge gift. And so again, we're thankful for the way that those stories, sometimes we hear them, sometimes we don't. But, I think about that with your event that's coming up. You may never know the impact, that something like that. I mean, I hope some really good stories come back to you. But if not, don't underestimate just the value and the importance of showing up for your community in a very public way and making it so that it benefits kids who come from hard places. We're super pleased to be in the prevention space as well through a technology platform called Care Portal. So what that looks like practically is a case manager may be in the home of, a lot of times it's a biological parent who maybe had an abuse report called on them. A child protection investigator went to the home. They saw maybe some environmental concerns or some poverty-based barriers, but there's really not a reason to remove the child from the home. What we hear a lot is that kids are sleeping on the floor, like in our community, which is wild. Or they're co-sleeping. We hear of families of 3, 4, 5 people all sharing a mattress, and a lot of times it's on the ground as well. That's not a reason that we're going to take a kiddo from their home, right? If all their other needs are being met, mom and dad are attentive and loving, and they're trying their best, but they just need some tangible items. And so what a case manager does is they can sit down with the family and they can say, hey, we know some caring people in our community who can help you with some of these tangible needs. Would it be okay if I entered the request into Care Portal? And the family consents, and then that communication goes out to churches who have been trained by us on how to respond to those needs and offer a lot of dignity while they're doing it. And so case manager says, hey, this family needs a car seat, or they need formula, or they need a bed. And then the church that is within a specified mile radius of that request gets alerted, and they get a chance to say, we can meet that need. And then after being trained by us, they reach out to the caregiver and they show up and they can deliver that tangible item. And what that has done to reduce the number of kids coming into care and help, along with the Safe Children Coalition and a whole lot of other community efforts, not just Bridge Life, but to be able to support kids and keep them safely at home, it's been pretty remarkable. And so we're seeing, when I said that race number was 1,500 and now it's around 700, that's 700 is the more current number, because we've seen a significant reduction in the number of kids coming into care because our community, Bridge Life and others, are really investing highly on the front end and saying, how can we safely keep families together? And a lot of times it's just because they need some items and they need a little bit of community support. The hope is that church responder who shows up on the front door of that person can start to build a relationship with the family, because what we hope is that the case is closed and the system backs out of involvement, but now the family has a connection to a local church responder and a local church community who says, hey, we have VBS this summer. What are your kids up to, right? Or we've got a food pantry every Wednesday. You're welcome to come, and some of those kinds of things. So sometimes the family is interested, sometimes they're not, and we respect whatever position they're at, but at least they know that when the system is no longer there, there's a church just around the corner that can help with some of those needs. Isaiah 117 House, some of you guys asked me about this, so I know that one of our board members had the opportunity to come to a Kiwanis meeting maybe a couple of years ago and share about the need, and I'm happy to just give an update. Isaiah is a national organization. They're their own nonprofit. It's a local home that will be built to help with that transitional period. So let's say the child protection investigator goes to the home, it's not safe enough, and those kids do have to be removed. What's next? Right? And so a lot of times they're sitting in the back of a patrol car, they're sitting in a case manager's office, to no fault of the system. It's just, what do you do while you try to find a safe place? And so that takes time. They've got to make those calls, and they've got to figure out who's available and where can this child go. And so I'm happy to say that in our community, there will be a home that is a beautiful home that's welcoming and warm for children, that's going to be staffed by volunteers who are trauma trained, and we can bake cookies and you can take a nap, and while you're waiting, you're going to not feel like you're in trouble, right? You're not going to be riding in the back of a police car or wondering why you're sitting in this sterile office. You're going to be loved on and reassured that it's not your fault that you're here. And so where Bridge Life fits in with that is we want to identify gaps in the community and see, okay, is there anyone who's doing this well? Is this a need? Is there someone we can partner with? And then then how can we get that here? And so we were instrumental in bringing an Isaiah 117 house to our area. We've identified some land. We've kind of passed the baton off to them and their leadership now, and they're running with it and doing their thing, and we're just happy to be good partners in this space. So again, I would just leave you with the idea that everyone can do something. You being here is your something, and so we're super grateful for the way that you support Kids from Hard Places. Thank you all so much.
Jody, thank you. We, as always, golden ruler. You get the golden ruler, okay, to measure your future success. We've got the right people in place in this community, and that's what we're all about, trying to make sure it gets matched up. But
Great.
It's heartwarming, the stories and everything that you're doing, the collaboration with other organizations, and we're glad to step up and help anywhere we can.
Awesome.
But that's
Thank you
for
so much.
okay?
Thanks.
We'll get this guy right here. Thank you so much. Mr. Neil Unruh, you've got a couple comments. Take the stage.
Very quickly, I know you're ready to head to the door. Jim Thielen, please come forward. Mike, please stay forward. Again, Kiwanis and Scouting America are collaborating very well. We're featuring the youth, and this is a certificate to Jim by the Kiwanis Club of Bradenton in recognition of meritorious and dedicated service to scouting, and the same will be to Mike as well. So congratulations and thank you for all your service.
Thank you, sir.
And if you want to bring those Thursday, I'll present them to you again.
St. Joe's, thanks for being here today. We love having you guys. Connor, it's good to see you up on stage. Where is he? In the way back. You're in the way back by the TV stage. But love your parents. Love you. Thanks for the comments today. We're proud of what you guys are doing over at St. Joe's. So let's keep it going. Family Fest, be there. It's going to be Saturday. We got a couple people throwing out the first pitch. My nephew's going to be throwing it out. Something as far as business before we adjourn is we're going to be selecting soon future leadership for the Bradenton Kiwanis. So please be thinking about who might make a good incoming vice president for John's year. And please make mention of it to me or the governance committee chair, which is Janine. So please do be thinking about that. So in a few weeks, we're going to be talking about it. Probably vote on it in a month or so. We've got to be lined up for October 1st. Let's see. Next week, please join us. The grant award winners will be receiving their checks. And so Neil's going to have, he's going to have penmanship problems in a little bit. So many to write, right?
We'll be giving away close to $200,000 next week.
So it's a big week, so please show up. That's all I have. Go forward, do great things the rest of the week. Thanks for being here.